Good afternoon. Jakey SoCal with 2Old4Forza, and it's time for the next track guide for this season of TNT and the Radical RXC. I am now that the New Garden Indy Rivals event is over. I am now back to using a controller. So it was actually interesting to the last two weeks to do the wheel and pedal on a road course. But I think I'm gonna go back to the controller for a while now. Who knows? Maybe I'll break out the wheel down the road every now and then. I think my biggest issue is just I haven't got the brake feel back as far as especially Catalunya. It showed there's a couple places where you just want to brush the brakes, and I haven't wasn't able to get that quite sorted out. But anyhow, that was last week. This week, or this race upcoming, is going to be an Indy GP Classic. This one was when Matt was putting together the season. He had a good idea of the tracks that he wanted to run. There were a couple of gaps. He was like, "Where else do you think we can go?" And so this one was my suggestion. And so if it's a horrible race, you can blame me. Don't blame Matt. But I think this layout will suit this car pretty well. Should hopefully produce some really good racing, especially side by side in the final corner down the front stretch. That's my hope, but we'll see. But let's get into it here. I'm just going to go do a test drive. I'm just going to do a quick out lap just to kind of refresh my memory, and then we'll just kind of I'll break down what I'm looking at, what I'm doing, what the car seems to want to do, and then I'll run a mock race just to see if we can put it all together. All right, so that's a lap, an out lap. So let's do a slower lap and kind of break down kind of what I'm seeing as I'm driving around Indy. So unfortunately, the classic circuit, I think even both road courses, there's not a lot of what I would have loved to have had. A turn 10 do, and I have the same problem at Suzuka going into the final chicane. Is there are just places on this course. The catch fence here should have, um, markers as far as 3, 2, 1. The braking zone markers heading into turn one, just to give an additional reference point to help kind of like, oh, I'm braking just past the 3 or just past the 2. Unfortunately, we don't have that here, at least not that I can see. So, I'm there, and there's quite a few turns I am relying on where the braking line is a little more than other tracks. But in kind of correlating as I'm approaching, if I can't see where the braking line is starting, a couple of things, markers that I'm using to kind of let me know how close I'm getting to it is, as you pass the pit wall, you've got the course condition light there. That's warning one that you're getting close. The second thing, since I'm using hood view, that I'm looking for is that black Forza banner that's directly underneath the rearview mirror. That's the second thing I'm looking for. As that passes out of view, as that goes off the screen on my right there, it's only maybe that red line will start maybe just a half second in front of that. So usually braking will be about here. The other thing, if your eyes pick it up, that you might notice is as you're running down the front stretch, where these, as you can see, the catch fence cables, where kind of where they meet and join up with the the chain links there, the big chain links, at speed. And you can actually, if you see the second one down there below the rearview mirror, you can tell that there's slight lighter coloration to it. So your eyes might pick that up as you go down. So it's kind of using those. Of course, condition light's kind of the warning, hey, you're getting close. The black banner is right before you need to start braking, and I think, if you can spot the two chain links there, it's the first one. That's really kind of like, I think if you're braking at that point, it might be a little too late. But just kind of keep your eyes out for that, to kind of, again, it's just to try and give additional reference points in addition to the braking line in case you can't see it because you're in traffic. Um, that way it'll help there. So you'll be in fifth gear at this point. First, turn one's down into second. Usually, as I'm threshold braking, I'll actually start turning the car a little bit to try and get it into the corner. And when I was first doing laps, I was actually going all the way down to second. And then as I've gotten more comfortable with it, I think third is the way to go. Typically for me, it's like and I think this is something, a tendency with this car, it does have a bit of push to it. So at least for me under braking, there's been most of the time coming into one, I've been overcooking it a little bit. So I'm not quite, I'm trying to get the car, just on the edge here of the curbing. You can cross over the curbing a little bit. Just be careful how much throttle you're giving the car as you're crossing that curbing coming back on, because as you've experienced in other tracks, some curbings, when you're on full throttle trying to turn the car, it'll upset as you transition over it. But usually I'm trying to get here, clip it, and get the car pointed across. Again, I think third gear works best. So I'm not really using a lot of curb there. It's either stay off of it or cross over it. But just know, again, crossing over it, you do run the risk of dirtying the lap. But this second curb, as you can see, it's ridged, but it's pretty flat. So you can use a bit of the curbing on this curve as well. And in third gear, because you're a little lower in the rev range and it's going to take a second for the turbo to spool up and start spinning the rear tires, you can, play around with how aggressive you can be on the throttle. If you're not using traction control, just be aware that this coming off the curbing, it's not that bad. It's mostly because the exit of this, you're kind of cresting over a hill into the infield. That as you exit out, you might get a bit of wheel spin here. You can even kind of tell just barely that even, the I want to say the camber, but that's not the right the wording. But it's like actually no, it is slightly off camber. That was right. That again, it kind of slopes to the outside here a little bit, even on exit. So just know that, depending on how much throttle you're giving it, depending on how in steering, you might feel the back end tires spin up a little bit coming out of here. Again, even me trying to drive it like a knob, I've not put the car in a situation where it's, where I've done a 180. So, but just know you'll probably feel a little wheel spin coming out of here. And now into probably there's a couple of really tricky corners to get right. This upcoming is one of them. Usually on exit, I'll just bring it all the way to the inside here and follow the curb. And I do kind of follow the braking line out, that as you kind of exit out, you'll bring the car out to about here, where, this is always the tough part for me, because there is absolutely nothing that tells you where you need, if you're looking for other references about where to brake, there really isn't anything. It's usually, as you can kind of tell from the track map, you have the general curve and it kind of straightens out before this next right-hander. You can kind of see the brake in the tire barriers out there. That can kind of help as well. But really it's just get the car out, brake right about where the braking line is, going red, and it's a quick on off of the brakes. You want to get on the brakes enough to scrub the speed down, but then, but not so much. It's not like braking for turn one. You just need to scrub enough speed that you can make these next set of corners. Still in third. I think a lot of these next whole inside section until the backstretch is going to be done in third gear. I think that's the best way to do it. In my own practice, after I've done the quick braking on let off, and I'm starting to turn the car in. For me on the controller, and I think this is just typical for controller users, as I let off the brakes and starting to turn in, there's still a little bit of I'm still going to have a little bit of push before the front tires grip, and I think that's just the nature of the controller, since I'm probably putting more steering into the front wheels than you guys that are actually on a wheel setup will be. So your mileage may vary, but there's a little bit of understeer, and then the fronts will load up, the car will turn in. I tend to stay these next couple of curbs. I try to stay off of them. This inside one here, again, because you're trying as you're getting to the apex and you're starting to work your way out. You're trying to get back to the throttle as early as you can, and if you're on that inside curbing, it's enough to upset the back of the car on the way out. Um, the other one that's even deadlier is this outside one. I mean, you want to bring the car out as close to this as possible, but if you start crossing over this, and especially if there's not a lot, I mean, or seems to want to keep rotating there. I mean, I'm I'm over halfway over the white line, and my left sides are now there. The left side tires are now gone into the grass, and if you notice, for all intents and purposes, I'm still clean. I've not fully crossed the track limits at this point. So just be careful getting onto this curve. I'd say stay off of it if you can, because it's very easy to get the left sides out over the other side of the curb, and then once you're here, you're not going to be able to turn the car right to transition back. The car's just going to want to keep going straight because you've got two tires in the grass and two tires on the pavement. So stay off this curve if you can. And this next corner comes up quicker than you think. So in third gear, you're still going to be on throttle. You can clip this a little bit on the inside. Just there's a little bit of a bump, especially right about here. So if you clip the inside curbing as you transition off, the back end might wiggle on you a little bit. But when you get it right, you can be a nice full throttle here. Coming down into the hairpin, I tend to, and I've seen various lines through here. I've seen people go all the way to the right hand side, take a very wide entry into this corner, and try and late apex it. Or for me, I kind of follow the braking line. Where the braking line, I think once you're about mid track, a lot of times I'm actually braking in here on the inside of it. I think that's been my habit. I think I've developed that habit from racing the AI because they're horrible through here. They tend to check brake out of the previous corner back here. So then I get a massive run, so I got to dive to the inside. So I think I've just gotten used to taking a shallower entry into this corner. So this is one of those corners in the race. If you get a run on somebody, you might be able to try and surprise them, but just understand that it'll be a surprise because if they're not expecting you to take a lunge into this corner, you could end up meeting at the apex. But I'll break down in here again. I think third is still going to be best. I've done it in second, and the car feels more comfortable in third through these next couple of corners. But whatever entry line you take into this corner, I would say your goal is to try and late apex this so that you're kind of right next to the curbing as you exit. And then bringing it back across, this is where I will differ a little bit from the braking line. The braking line will want you a little more to the inside for this next corner. I actually like taking a little bit wider of an entry. It does open me up if somebody's like, if I'm side by side with somebody coming to this corner, it does leave me open for them passing me. But this is a very tricky corner for a couple of reasons. One, you can kind of see as you go into it, you're kind of diving in. It's kind of in a way it's kind of banked at the apex. You're kind of diving into a banking at the apex. You think it's a 90-degree corner, but it's not. It's a little more than 90 degrees, so the exit's a little bit tougher. It's if you treat it like it's a 90-degree corner, you're gonna exit too early and then cross track limits. But anyhow, so what I try to do is, again, in third gear, probably a quick brush the brake, bring it in, And I'm trying to get to the curbing a little bit as close there. And what I'm looking for on exit, as far as me trying to roll back into the throttle and remembering that this is more than a 90-degree turn, is trying to find something that I can lock my eyes onto to kind of give me a reference on exit, so that I can get a decent line out, use as much track as I can without running the risk of, going off, going off on track limits. So what I'm looking for is, now I'm going to point out, it's, you could say, probably you could probably use the water tower that's way out there. What I have, and I just noticed that now, but what I've mostly been using is, if you notice the tire bundles that are going around, that they're blue and white bundles, blue and white bundles, except for the last two sets, that they're just colored loose tires. You can see kind of the texture change when it goes from a banded group of tires to just colored tires. That's what I lock onto, is just lock onto that as a reference and just kind of keep that in peripheral as I'm exiting the corner, because it gives me the ability to exit out. And if I point the car towards it, I can have this nice gentle line out. And then if I need to, I can cross over halfway over and then start bringing the car back across. But yeah, it is. I'm going to back it up here a little bit. Yeah, so it's these last couple of sets of tires that I look for. You can kind of see they're color tires versus the banded bundles just prior to it. Exiting out third, fourth gear. I don't think you get high enough where we go into fifth, so you'll be in fourth gear at this point. Now we're hitting to this last part, this nice left-right combo rhythm section that I am horribly inconsistent on. I know what I'd like to do and what I think I can get away with, but especially the last part of it, I tend to be hit or miss. But for braking for this turn, the additional reference points I look for with in addition to the braking line is, you see the Forza banners here on the right side. Just past this second one, you're going to pass the first one. Just past the second one is right about where you're going to start braking. So usually, so that's where it'll line up with the braking line. Now coming in here, this is a very flat entry into, and then actually it kind of looks like it kind of goes downhill a little bit into this last section. But because it's very flat and there's not a lot of reference points, it's hard to spot where. And again, because there's two variations of this turn. The classic GP uses the earlier apex. If you do the Indy GP, it's the second later one, but we're using the first one here. So what I try to do is I'm coming down even before I'm braking for this turn. Back it up. As I'm approaching here, the second I've got that banner kind of tagged and in peripheral to pay attention to it as it goes past. I'm not actually watching it go. It's just peripherally watching it. The next thing my eyes are going to start looking for is those orange cones that are going to be pretty much right on the apex of the turn. So once I know the black banner's there, I'm watching that. Get my eyes to the left as best I can. Brake for the turn, down to third gear. And between, if you've got on the braking line and you know approximately where those cones are, that's where the apex is, where the corner is, the curbing is. You can kind of use that and arc the car in. Now, I will probably turn in a little earlier than the braking line suggests. And ideally, this is a part of the course where you might be able to hustle the car a little bit and use some of the curbing, but be careful. Because sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you can't. There's usually, you're going to be on the gas a little bit off. A lot of times I'm also doing just a little bit of a brush brake just to get some weight to the front tires to help turn in, because it's very easy for this car to push if you're going too fast and trying to turn. I might grab a little bit of curbing here, bring the car back across. I do like getting a little bit of curbing here on exit. It's this last one. This is the last one that I tend to turn in too late for, and it's because, again, there's really no reference. If you're using the braking line, this is where the braking line lies to you. For me, on the controller, I'm finding what I want to do is like I do want to use the curving on this corner getting onto this long stretch. And this is the most important turn because it leads onto the the transition back to the oval in the short chute between 1 and 2 for the final turn. So getting a good run out of this corner is going to pay off all the way down to turn 1 on the next lap. So the braking line is going to start going yellow, and then it goes red briefly, and then you're at the apex. The braking line lies. Well, what I'm finding is you actually want to touch the brakes just before it turns yellow. Just as the front of the car is getting that yellow, touch the brakes and turn the car in. And if you do that, you're able to use a bit of this curb here and then roll back into the throttle on exit. And that's usually the ideal line. Or then just bring it back out to the edge here. Most of the time I'm missing that braking, and I wind up missing being wide of the apex and then I can't get back to the throttle early. So something to pay attention to when you're in traffic. If someone's missed that apex and they've gone wide, and you can undercut them a little bit, you might be able to get a decent run on the inside out as you get back into the front straight. So again, this is another one of those, kind of like the other turn earlier. You want to bring the car out, but keep it on track. Don't use any of this exit curbing because it will unsettle the back of the car, and you really want maximum smooth acceleration to finish off the lap. So for turning to get out of the infield back onto the oval, I kind of use the inside curving, where the point of that inside curving starts to transition off the screen. That's when I start to arc the car into this corner here. And at this point, I'll show you the line. I'll just hug the inside here all the way out. And at this point in the lap, I don't think there is any right or wrong line to take into this final corner. We're running so much downforce. If it really comes down to just finding what's comfortable for you and what gets you the most consistent quick lap times. You've got enough downforce. If you wanted to hug the inside line all the way around through this final turn, you can. If you want to take a more traditional line and that's usually kind of what I've been doing, is I'll bring the car most of the way out, maybe two-thirds, three-quarters of the way out, and I'll use where the safer barrier, kind of where the wall transition is to the safer barrier is where I used kind of as a reference to start turning in. And even then, I treat this as a late apex corner, so I probably wouldn't bring it down to the inside till about there, and then just take a traditional exit out of the oval. Now, if you're going to try and hug the inside all the way through, maybe you're trying to break the draft of somebody behind you. The risk, if you're going to continue to hug the inside of this corner past the curbing, just be very, very, very careful that you don't get so close. You have very little to any margin of error with the end of the pit wall. So I'd hate for somebody to be trying to hug the inside, protect the lead, and then get it wrong and then clobber the pit wall there. So you might want to start bringing the car off the bottom of the track at this point to bring it back onto the front stretch. And again, you'll be in fifth gear, probably as you're getting back onto the oval. Bring the car out, and it'll be interesting to see how well the car drafts. I don't know that, since we're running so much downforce, I don't know how big the draft will be. But again, my hope is that depending on how people get out of the corner and back on, that you might be able to do some side-by-side through that final corner. Just make sure you're keeping track of who's what where. Do they have a run? And that's a lap of Indy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and do a race. And based on my own lap times, I think just kind of how I structure these test races. I would not surprise me. I'm going to be guessing. I'm going to do. Let's see. How did it do that? 23. No, hang on. I need to do the math again because I think 22 laps. Sorry for the feedback. Let's see. I think I was doing. Here's the. Oh, minutes. 2100 seconds. Divided by 77 seconds on average. That's, yeah, a little low. I'm going to go 26. So you're looking, it's going to, the lap count is probably going to shock you. It's going to be in excess of 50 laps, but you're going to be turning laps probably in the minute, anywhere between, depending what group you're in, I'm guessing anywhere between in the 116s to the 120s. I mean, and I'm taking a guess of what Group One will be doing, but I think this is a very quick lap, especially when you get things right. Today I'm going to be racing against. I'm starting 60 seconds back. I'm still doing Forza P2. I'm throwing in the early prototype racers and then Forza P1. Bucket 2 and Bucket 3 are, I think, on their own quicker than me, depending on the car. Definitely, I'm using Forza P2 as kind of the jam cars to hopefully slow traffic up and maybe create some decent racing. 26 laps, 23 drive avatars, and actually, to do this, I'm going to have to back out. One thing about Forza, because it lowered the drive avatars going into this race, I can't just magically increase the drive avatars and have it pop those people in. So gonna have to reload. Sorry, that's my fault. I didn't check settings before I came in. Race setup, make sure it's stupid Forza. Max drive avatars, 6 laps. Second delay for me. That's even. What? You know what? Okay, so I had saved it with 27 last night. All right, so we'll do 27. That should be, yeah, so they're going to start 30 seconds back, early prototype racers, and 50 seconds for P1. I'll start 60 seconds back. And, I should go to race and load in. So just, again, in my own driving and pushing lap times, again, we know the car will push on throttle. So, some of these longer corners, as you're exiting, the car will tend to push a little bit. And if you're trying to maximize entry speed in the corner, the car will push a little bit. And that's something to watch for as you're coming up and you're trying to make passes. Look at what the guy in front of you is doing. So if it looks like he's exiting wide here, that might give you an opportunity to undercut and get a run there. So I'm just kind of babbling at this point. I'm just stalling for time. Home again in Indiana. Okay, I'll stop. Besides, I don't want to get a copyright strike. But yeah, that Nissan, I think I did the test race. A lot of times I'll do a quick test race prior to doing these just so I can get an idea of, mainly just to get an idea of what the AI times are to see if I can find the right mix of car classes and bucket delays. But that Nissan, that front-wheel drive Nissan is hellacious. Like, no way to pass it on the straights. You can catch it in the corners, kind of. But again, it's the variety of cars can be pretty interesting. Though I would expect the Porsches to win this one. my hope is just that, you know, I've got everything delay set right, that I've got a few clusters of cars here to work through. Ah, that's late. Look at tires. There we go. Okay, late. That'll take a bit for me to figure out. All right, I'm just going to hug the inside this lap. If you're going to do that, you can kind of use the pit wall as that transition point of like, okay, let the car park back out. I did that before there. Okay. But past the apex, you know, I'm starting to roll back into the throttle, but I'm really not committing the full throttle until, you know, I can kind of spot those tires and have a good, you know, exit where I know that I'm not going to dirty the lap by going too wide. I think for me, the line I normally take out of here is just kind of more what I would say is the traditional line. No, that was a little close. That would be something. And I'm turning in a little earlier for that than what the line's suggesting. Not saying that what I'm doing is right. I'm just pointing out what I'm doing a little differently. Oh, and cones are made of lead here, so be careful. Because you wouldn't think they'd upset the car all that much, but wheel spin there on exit. That's a bit better. That's not going to help. Damn it. Well, I'm not going to restart this. It'll just be a little bit shorter of a race. I'm turning in too early there. That's why I'm not getting as good of an exit out of there as I can. We're leaving third for Chris. Yeah, you can wind it up to third if you want. I think the upshift to fourth is still preferable. Oops, excuse me. We'll pit here about lap 11, just as normal. Yeah, I'm way turning in too early now for that. It's either I'm turning in too early and then getting back power too early, or I can turn in when I am, but I just need to stay in the corner a little bit longer because it's more than 90 degrees. We'll box this lap. Excuse me. If it's been a while since you've raced at the Indy GP Classic, pit lane entry is pretty easy, but it's a longer entry. It's going to be a bit before the game actually catches you, but you are going to go in full throttle. So if you've been kind of watching, you've seen where the pit entry marker is. So probably what I would do if I was going to go to pit lane is exiting onto, that's why you don't want to cross the curbs. Exiting into the short chute here, just keep it to the inside and then point straight for the wrench, and then you're in the warm-up lane and just hold on. And depending if you get it right, maybe someone gets it wrong or they start to back off a little early. Who knows? It wouldn't surprise me if people are pitting close together that you might catch somebody heading into the pits right before, because it's not going to catch you until you get right to pit lane. So in theory, if you missed the pits and you had to make a last-minute dive, you probably could try diving across the warm-up lane divider, the grass there, to try and get into pit lane. Always the Peugeots. You got somebody to kind of race with for a lap or two. They'll start to pull away from me here on the back stretch. Yeah, see, he took a much better line out of there. The AI does the kind of that late apex too on the final corner. It's why all the cones are going. Why would you put cones like that? Fixing cables. I'm going to put it to 625 at the line. Okay, barely 178 if I put it in 6. I don't know that shifting to 6 is any advantage given how much downforce the car has. You're starting to hit that wall of drag. Much better through here, so patience. And on the outside, even though I'm going to get out dragged down the straightaway, but the Toyota might hold them up. I love that they put the Eagle Mark III in the game. I just wish they would have gotten the kind of more the aero package that they would run for like the Daytona 24, where it's the lower downforce package versus the high road course downforce. Ooh, that's a little wide. Just I'm taking a little wider entries just to give myself some room and maybe look for an undercut or a crossover on exit, or maybe who knows, stick it at put it on the outside in the corner. But I'm also giving myself enough space just in case they do something completely unexpected. I don't get caught up in it. Can't see them in your mirrors, but the little arrow and it's orange, and leave a lane. guess the mirrors are even on your screen. The other thing too, with the controller, it's easy enough for me to look left and look right. I don't know how easy that is for wheel users. I couldn't do it on when I had the wheel set up through the drive hub, even though I had the little thumbstick on the wheel. It was good for going through menus, but I don't know, maybe if I were to set that, change the controller settings, maybe that gives me that ability to do that. So the LMP1 car is going to probably struggle to get past the guy. Let's turn the straight, but I think the Jag is actually pretty quick in a straight line. Then maybe I can catch them both. Got a little bit of a run, but he's eventually going to outrun me. Oh, maybe not. Wow. Oh, there he goes. Him on the outside. Oh, they got the speed definitely there. That's where I was talking about, that move. If the guy doesn't know you're there, it could surprise him. You could wind up kind of getting together at the apex. Oh, I mistimed that. Sorry, Corvette. Alright. Receipt paid. Keep it clean. Lost a lot of ground before. I don't know who has to pit yet or not. I'm assuming the LMP1 car doesn't have to pit. I'm actually assuming none of them have to pit, but I'm hoping. I don't know. We've got enough to catch the early prototype car that's actually in the lead, but I don't know if he has to pit yet or not. But I'm hoping hold him up. Okay, that's me not being patient. That's going to cost me. So I don't have the top end that these guys do. Just any kind of bobble getting onto this front stretch. I need to carry as much speed as I can. I took a look. 2 laps to go at the line. Funny, I can now accelerate him, but oops. Oh, he still had to pit. Okay. With 2 laps left. I don't think I can get the leader, but maybe I can get. Maybe I can get second. Oh, that was a bit of a lunge. Again, it's the AI. I could have waited there and just take advantage of where they just normally check up. Not bad, P2. 117, 185. I think on a uber clean, perfect lap, 116s probably could get into a high 116, maybe. But that's Indy GP. Again, I did, because I trying to reset this thing, get it reset back up. I missed getting the lap count back up, but I would say for race night, expect in and around 50 laps. Again, it's a very fast lap since you're full throttle for a good chunk of it, especially on that front straight. So yeah, the lap count will seem high, but the race will still be about what it normally is. But that's Indy GP. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers that this car track combo produces some really good racing for you guys. This has been a fun car to drive. But with that, I hope you guys have a great weekend and happy racing.